So, good evening, my fellow members and honorable guest, Mr. Fain. I won't take a lot of your times because you are probably waiting for Mr. Fain and Sharon to give you briefing about New Year, the new class. Last year, I mean, all I can say that I salute your dedication and commitment that you went through a very challenging time. And if we all can beat this kind of pandemic together, we can do a lot of things together. And this year, it looks like very promising. Things are changing. I hope we will get together with our officers and their families. Jim Fan will explain more how we can do it. But it looks like that a lot of people, officers and our members all are vaccinated. That's a good sign. And right now, everything is opening up. And I hope we will go back and see all those icebreakers and badge ceremonies and the other things in future. But the detail will Sharon will explain. And thank you so much for your commitment and your dedication. And this organization is strong and dedicated just because of your commitment. And I thank CGSC for continuing this program during the pandemic, even though it was very tough. But the connection between the officers and the sponsors was pretty good. I talked to many students and many officers, and they were very happy the way you guys connected with them and supported them during this pandemic time. And I hope that you will keep this connection with all those officers who left and not here in Kansas. And the coming families you will welcome with your whole heart. So I will let Sharon to go and start.
Okay, thank you, Zahid. So let me add my welcome to Zahid's. Thank you for being here this evening, and most of all, thank you for your commitment, your interest and willingness to volunteer and be a sponsor and be really an ambassador representing our country with our officers from around the world. So thank you very much for that. We really appreciate it. We wouldn't have an organization, the kind of organization we have without your commitment. I trust everybody can see the screen okay. We have, let me know if not. We have two presentations tonight. One will be the one you see here is the one I'm going to give. It will be the shorter one with just a little bit of information about, for those sponsors that are brand new, a little information about People to People, a little bit of information about the class that is getting ready to graduate, about their badge ceremony and graduation. And then I'll give just a little bit of information about 2022, but the majority of that information will come from Mr. Fain, and Mr. Bourne, I think, is going to join as well. I'll cover access to the base, the LAC process, and then a little bit of information about how to stay connected with the chapter. And then I'll turn it over after that to Jim. If you raise your hand, I think there's a function to raise your hand in the system, but I probably won't be able to see it with the slides showing. So you can also put, there's a chat function. You can put questions in chat, and I encourage you to do that so that we make sure that we answer everything before the night's over. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. This is the background on People to People. Many of you know this, but for those that are new, it was founded back in 1956 as a government agency when then President Eisenhower was our president. And he intended for it to, he never intended for it to stay a government agency. He wanted to privatize it. And so he did, and he asked his friend Joyce Hall if he would head up this new organization. And Joyce Hall said yes, on one condition: it has to be located in Kansas City. So that's what happened. That's why Greater Kansas City People to People is here, and our headquarters is here in Kansas City as well. It was incorporated in the state of Missouri in 1961, and you'll, in the next couple of slides, you'll probably see some sort of who's who of leaders. There's Bob Hope, and then there's there's some ties with 9 U.S. presidents who have served as honorary chairs for PTPI. Mary Eisenhower was the CEO for a number of years, and now her son, Merrill Eisenhower Atwater, is the current CEO of PTPI. But Mary is still involved and connected to the organization. And as I mentioned, headquartered in Kansas City. There's about 200 chapters around the world. Kansas City is, I don't know if it's still the largest, but it's pretty close. If it's not, I think we may have been, there may be some chapters in Asia that are have a little bit more membership, but we're one of the largest, if not the largest. We are a membership-based organization, and our belief is that international peace and understanding can be best achieved one-to-one, and that was really the spirit of Eisenhower, was if people would just get to know each other on a one-to-one basis, then there would be a lot less strife and conflict in our world. So our a mission to promote international understanding and friendship through educational, humanitarian, and cultural activities involving a broad range of direct contacts, exchange of ideas and experiences among the people of Greater Kansas City and peoples of different countries and diverse cultures that will help build an enduring world peace. And I think at least one of those pictures, maybe both of them, are from an annual meeting 2 or 3 years ago. Of course, we haven't been able to meet in person for a couple of years, so that might be our last one that we had in person. And the sponsorship is really our flagship program. As you'll hear more, we have somewhere between 110 to 120 officers each year, with the exception of last year where there was about 45 officers because of the pandemic. This year we're going to have 113 officers. And then there are some other programs. You can just look at the list here, but suffice to say that during the pandemic, these programs have not been continued, but we hope that they will start up again when things get a little bit more back to normal. And what does the chapter offer? Well, it's an opportunity to interact with international visitors and also to advance international understanding and friendship by face-to-face contact. That one-on-one contact is really the key. And then it's really also, this is maybe the most important, an opportunity to make a difference in how others perceive America, which, often I think the officers come and have one or a certain impression of America, and we hope that maybe they leave based on your interaction with them, that they leave with perhaps even a more favorable impression of America than when they came. And it's also an opportunity for personal development and enrichment. We encourage people to travel, especially now that things are being eased a little bit because with the pandemic, hopefully on the tail end. But this is a picture of the Habers on one of their travels, and if you talk to any of our sponsors that have been sponsoring for a little while, many can tell you stories about experiences going to visit their officers after an officer that they sponsored here, and most often will receive an invitation to go visit that officer in his or her home country. So, and I can tell you personally, it's a very rewarding and wonderful experience. They're usually so grateful for the kindness and the generosity and just their being a host to them when they were here, that it seems to be repaid almost tenfold when you go visit them. They're so grateful and thankful. And then now moving on a little bit to the timeline, this is for the class of AY21. So the graduating class they will have their badge ceremony on the 17th of June at 9 o'clock. And then the graduation is the following day, also at 9 o'clock. We, for in-person events, it's always encouraged that we attend just the badge ceremony, because the graduation has everybody, and you wouldn't really get a chance to spend much time with your officer. But this year, the graduations are virtual, so you can attend those on the Army Facebook page, and look on, as you see here, look on facebook.com and then look for Army University. And if it's on your app, you can just search for Army University. We also have this information posted on our website. And even if you're not sponsoring an officer, please feel free to check it out and watch the badge ceremony. Especially that one is nice, because there'll be just the 45 officers graduating this year. All right, and now a little bit about the 2022 class. Again, I think flexibility, we had this on here last year, that flexibility is the key to sponsorship, but I think that's still true. While, our understanding is that a lot of things will be in person this year, as opposed to really nothing was in person for the year that's just being completed. That could still change depending on conditions. So we still need to, be mindful that the pandemic is not completely over, and that we do still need to have flexibility, because things could change. IMSD this time again do airport pickup. So unlike our normal years prior to the pandemic, where we encourage people to go to the airport, not this year. The pickups will be done by IMSD. The officers will report, most of them, on the 28th of June, and they'll go into a 14-day quarantine, and then they'll, then you'll be allowed to see them in person. But I do want to encourage, don't wait until the quarantine is over to contact your officer by electronic means or by the phone, FaceTime or Zoom or text or WhatsApp or any of those tools that are out there. Make contact right away as soon as you have the contact information for your officer. Some dependents have been authorized, and it's our understanding that there are others likely will be after the IMS arrives. And the icebreakers, at least at this time, are planned to be in person for the week of the 19th through the 22nd, and there will be four icebreakers, which you'll receive an invitation in the mail for the night that you're invited to attend. You'll attend one of those 4 nights. And there will not be a registration day. The registration day is the kind of like the trade show atmosphere, where different vendors and businesses and organizations like ours that support or provide services to the officers would have sort of a trade show atmosphere where they could walk around and visit with each of us, but that will not be held this year. I mentioned this, that conditions could change. So the focus on when the IMS most need your help will be that, at least the in-person help will be after the quarantine and up until the time when they start the classes, which will be on August 23rd. That's when the flag ceremony is, and the flag ceremony is the official kickoff of the year. And I didn't check this with Jim or Dave, but going to make an assumption here that the pace of the course again will be pretty intense. And the reason we bring this up is that, you know, that's why that July through 11 through August 22nd period is critical, because they don't have as taxing of a schedule during that period. But then once the course starts on the 23rd, it gets to be a lot more intense, and their days are longer, they're studying, and they just won't have as much time to meet with you once the class officially kicks off.
That is correct.
All right, thanks, Jim. Okay, so then for LAC cards, this process is for people to people. Our normal cycle is we submit our applications in December or January, and they're processed in February. And the expiration date for any application or any passes will be the end of February. Well, we're kind of in an off cycle now. So if you, for some reason, have not submitted your LAC for this coming year, please do it as soon as possible, because it'll just get busier and busier as officers that are here now move out, and as new officers arrive. So please submit them right away if you have not done so. The forms are, you see there's a link to the form. You can also contact Pat Burnett or myself for a form if you're unable to find it on the website. You complete only the top 2 sections through the criminal history section. Don't sign or date the form. You return the form to Pat or myself, and then we'll submit it to IMSD for processing. It varies, the time varies. Sometimes it's a day or 2, sometimes it's a couple of weeks or so. Just depends on the level of volume that they have going at that particular time, but I encourage you to do it sooner than later. The expiration of the card will be in February. Even if you submit it in September, it's still going to expire in February. So it's you need to get on that year cycle if you want a pass that lasts for a whole year. But so please be mindful of that. And then after you're notified by us, by Pat or myself, that it's approved, you have a 30-day window in which to pick up the LAC from the Visitor Control Center. And we do recommend that you contact them, make sure the systems are functioning and that your app is approved before you make the trip. If you miss the window, that 30-day window to pick up, you're allowed to resubmit an application, but that you can only do that 3 times, and then you can't get an LAC after that. All right, and then just we want to thank everyone for your commitment to sponsorship. We know that many of our members do have a special place in their heart for people to people, so we really thank everyone for that, for your commitment. You can connect with us on our website or also on Facebook. And then we do send out our main source of communication that gets pushed to the members comes from our email blasts, and that is through MailChimp. So you will see, even though a lot of the information is related to sponsorship, it's not going to come from me or any of the military committee members. It's going to come from our president. So you'll be getting in your email inbox, you'll get a message from Zahid, and that's our MailChimp tool that delivers those. And it varies on how often. Sometimes we go a month or so before you'll get another one from us. But this time of the year, when it's busy with changing and getting the new class coming in, they will be more frequent. And that's it for me. Does anyone have questions specifically for me before I turn it over to Jim? All right. Let me get Jim's presentation. And let's see. Can you all see that okay? Yes?
Hey Sharon, this is Bob Batterson. I just wonder if you could make a mention or two. Are there any COVID-specific restrictions for us to enter the base or see our officers?
I'll talk to
Because-
that.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else have questions that we want to tee up? All right, be sure you don't forget them though, right? Either put them in the chat or write them down so that we can cover them all after Jim is finished. All right, it's all yours, Jim.
Okay, thanks. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So just for your information, I've got my chat box open too in the corner. So I'm going to try to refer to that if questions pop up as we go along. But what I would ask is I'll try to move through this briefing relatively quickly and allow for time for questions and answers. And I think some of your concerns will be answered in the conduct of the briefing itself. So next slide, please. So I just want to share, especially for our brand new sponsors, I want to share a little bit about our office and the mission that my organization has. So I have been directing the International Military Student Division on Fort Leavenworth since July of 2003. And we have the mission responsibility to provide support to the international military students and their authorized family members in support of a program that belongs to the U.S. State Department and is executed by the U.S. Department of Defense. So we really have two aspects of that mission that make it understandable. We have an administrative responsibility, and we literally do everything. It's comprehensive for the officers and their authorized dependents. Now, I want to point out, I have deliberately used the words authorized dependents now a couple of times just in the last few minutes, because one of the things I need folks to understand is this is a formal program. Again, it belongs to the State Department and is administered by the Department of Defense, and we operate under some very strict guidelines that derive from U.S. federal legislation and U.S. State Department policy, United States Department of Defense policy, and various regulations. So one of the aspects of this is that we invite international student participation, and we invite authorized dependent accompaniment, but that is under certain constraints. And there are obligations that the sending country has for their citizens, just as the U.S. government has for U.S. citizens that we send abroad in support of U.S. military or U.S. diplomatic operations. So occasionally we have issues where an officer and their family comes, and then maybe at some point during the year, a sister-in-law or a brother-in-law or a cousin or a friend from home all of a sudden joins, and then that starts to have an impact on the officer, the family, their economics, et cetera, et cetera. And we have in the past had sponsors reach out to us and ask us why we aren't or why we can't help those new arrivals. And the bottom line is authorized official participants of the program, and so we won't be able to extend formal support to them. Again, I'm just pointing that out because, especially for those that are new, I want you to be aware that we do operate within very well-defined constraints, and that our guidance and our essentially our programmatic guidance does not originate locally. This is a U.S. government program, and my office is responsible for ensuring compliance with all U.S. government rules, regulations, et cetera. So we have the administrative mission, and we have an academic responsibility in regards to a short prep course that we teach. But then the second major component of our mission is the conduct of something called the Field Studies Program. And the field studies program, Mr. Dave Bourne, who works in my office and is responsible for that aspect of the program, is on the Zoom with us, and he's going to talk in a little more detail about it. But the bottom line is, it is a directed program that's designed to expose all of our international students as broadly as possible to all aspects of life in the United States. And fortunately, one of the components of that program is something called Diversity and American Life. And it is, in fact, that aspect of the field studies program that enables our office to support sponsorship. So it allows us to spend money in support of recruitment, retention, sponsorship, appreciation. And so that I'll let Dave talk to that in a little more detail as we get further along. Next slide, please. So you can't have a military briefing without a wire diagram. So I just want to share with you the organization of my office. So Fort Leavenworth is commanded by an Army 3-star general who is the commandant of the Command and General Staff College. We have a 2-star general that is the deputy commandant and is more directly responsible in the day-to-day operations of the college. And then we have the various schoolhouses, each with their directors that actually execute and deliver the educational programs that our officers are here to undergo. I work for the senior leadership. I report to them, but I take guidance as if you look off to the dotted line that goes off to the right side of the chart, I receive guidance both from the joint staff and from the Army staff relative to specific changes and rules that may be in place and vary from time to time. The office is broken out into 2 parts, into an administrative section headed up by Mr. Adam Escobedo, who's both my deputy and he is the lead for all administration. And he has 3 program assistants, and we're gonna show you their pictures and show you which countries they're responsible for here a little bit later in the briefing. And then Mr. Bourne is ably assisted by 2 members of the staff who help him to plan, execute, and deliver the field studies program. So next slide, please. So formal interactive training of foreign military personnel began with Fort Leavenworth. The first international student of record was a Swiss lieutenant who attended what was then called the School for Application of Infantry and Cavalry in 1894. And from that date, the United States government traces all cooperative military education and training programs to this day. Our program is, again, it's not just the oldest, but it is by far the largest and most broadly reaching senior professional military education program anywhere in the world. So to date, we have trained and educated over 8,400 international military officers from 165 different countries. So this is the list of countries that have sent students to us. If you take the time to read through the list, some of those countries don't exist anymore, or they exist in a little different format. But this is reflective of the strategic outreach and the efforts of the United States government to build relationships with partner nations everywhere around the world. And this program is a cornerstone in that effort. Next slide, please. I like to share this slide, especially with folks who have some understanding of higher education, especially. Of our 8,400 graduates, 27 of them went home and eventually became heads of state, heads of government. And the 3 gentlemen that you see pictured on this particular slide, from left to right on the slide, are the King of Bahrain, the Prime Minister of Singapore, and the president of Rwanda, who also happens to currently be the serving president of the African Union. And these are the three currently sitting heads of state that are graduates from our program. But I would tell you that there is no university or college anywhere in the world that wouldn't be proud to put up this type of number to show the quality of the officer or graduate that they have played a role in developing. Now, the real takeaway from this slide is not that the Command and Drill Staff College took a bunch of lumps of coal and turned them into diamonds. What really should be taken from this slide is this, more than anything else, I think attests to the seriousness and the quality and the effort that our partner nations place in selecting their officers to attend our program. Literally, the international students that you're going to sponsor this year represent the absolute best of the best that their home army has to offer. In some cases, your officer earned their way into this course by being the #1 officer in their home country staff college. And so it really is tremendously competitive and tremendously prestigious to come to this staff college from abroad. Next slide. This slide, if you can see it, I just want to make sure everyone, again, this is really a visual depiction of the breadth of the reach of this program. When I am briefing folks about the program, I always reflect the participation in terms of these geographical combatant commands. So if you're not familiar with what I'm referring to when I say combatant command, the United States Department of Defense has divided the world up into geographical areas. Each one of those areas is the responsibility of a 4-star U.S. military officer who has the responsibility to synchronize and harmonize the international military and engagements in that specific region. And it is, in fact, the strategic priorities of those combatant commanders that ultimately lead to the list of countries that we invite students to attend from. I'm often asked, why do we have students from this country, or why do we not have students from another country? And the frank answer to that is the students we have here are the highest priority relationships at the time. We are constantly revising and expanding. And everyone knows the old saying, make new friends, keep the old. One is silver, the other is gold. Well, sometimes some of our new partnerships require additional attending and more attention. And so you will see from year to year this representation shift a little bit. And in part, it's because of the changing dynamics in the world. When I took the program in 2003, in my first year, we had 90 officers, and I think we had 4 officers from the African continent. If you look at the representation from AFRICOM, you see it's now more than 20. Similarly, the Indo-PACOM region has grown significantly. Those are emerging areas, geographical areas of importance, strategic importance to the United States government, and we are doing our best to make relationships that will allow us to help our friends to professionalize their militaries, to reinforce civilian control of the military in those respective countries, and to help us as we fight against some of the influences that are not in our shared interests. I have reflected on this slide just for your awareness, not just the 113 international students that we will have that you will be sponsors of, but also of the 2 other programs that we have that train internationals for long duration courses. So in the green, you will see that there are 8 students who are going to be doing a program in the advanced military studies. Those are 8 students that are in the current class that were selected through a selection process and are being given the opportunity to stay here for a second year of study. So if you currently are the sponsor of any of those students, we encourage you to retain the friendship. However, we do not continue formal sponsorship once those students leave the Command and Drill Staff Officer course. Our view is that by that point and during that second year, they're well established. And again, we would absolutely expect your friendships to continue, but formal sponsorship terminates. And then the 3 internationals that are reflected in blue are 3 senior officers who are here going to a War College level fellowship that is offered to a very small select number of students. Only 16 total students go through that program, 3 of them internationals. And it just so happens that one of those 3 internationals this year, the officer from Germany, was in fact in the Command and Drill Staff Officer course in 2007. So he and his family, he was a major when he went through the course in 2007. He's now back as a full colonel, and he will go through that program. And he and his family are really thrilled and excited to be back here in Leavenworth. And I'm sure if you sponsored them, they've already reached out to you, and you're probably well aware of what's going to be going on with them this year. Next slide. Okay, just very quickly, I want to reiterate, my office is the International Military Student Management Office. We're responsible for everything for the officers and their authorized dependents. I have a significant latitude in everything from discipline to academic counseling to financial assistance to medical appointments. We're a comprehensive support mechanism for these officers while they're here. And so you as sponsors, if your officer shares with you something that doesn't seem right to you, or they need help, or they oftentimes they will share with you things that they don't necessarily share with us. If at any point during your year the officer complains or has concerns, or you discern something that's concerning to you, please reach out to us so that we can get involved and assist in fixing the problem. My office, again, we have the authority and the responsibility to do that. So rather than you spending your time and quite honestly, potentially starting down a rabbit hole or going in the wrong direction, get those issues to us so that we as the professionals with the authority and experience can resolve them. Another point I want to just again reiterate, my office is a compliance agent of the United States Army and the United States government. For those of you who are new to sponsorship, your experience is just going to be your experience. And as you move forward, it won't seem strange to you. But for those who've sponsored for many years, there have been some fairly significant changes with our international program. And a lot of it has to do with installation access to computer systems, et cetera, et cetera. Some of you might remember the unfortunate shooting incident at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida in December of 2019. And that event was, again, regrettably precipitated by an international military student who killed a number of U.S. military and U.S. government employees in December of 2019. And that led to a very quick and swift crackdown on international military student access to DoD installations. So now your students in the past, they were given a Department of Defense ID card that would have allowed them to get into any DoD installation. So if they traveled from Fort Leavenworth to Fort Riley on the weekend, or while they were on vacation over a break, if they were in the vicinity of a DoD facility, they could access and use that facility. That is no longer the case. Your students, my students, they will be limited physically to access to Fort Leavenworth and Fort Leavenworth only. And they cannot go on any other Department of Defense or U.S. government secured location without my written permission and without some fairly significant coordination. So as you talk with your officer and as they plan their holidays and things like that, just make sure that you always close out any discussion you have with them to make sure that they come back to the International Military Student Division and ensure that we have cleared their travel so that they don't go somewhere and find themselves stuck. They have no escort privileges at all. So they cannot get anyone on the installation. And that is why it's so important. And I would reiterate what Sharon said earlier about the LAC applications. If you don't have a LAC or your LAC is going to expire very shortly, please get that into us immediately. We are entering the busiest time of the year. The Visitor Coordination Center in the months of June and July traditionally issues about 4,000 LACs per month. And that's associated with all of the various transportation and people that have to come on and off the post to move the students and everything else that's involved in getting this entire 2021 class graduated and out and the new class in. So they will have very little time to process these things. So the sooner you get those to us, the better. Let me talk about COVID-19 vaccinations. There was a question about this. Our international students who are at Lackland Air Force Base right now, undergoing English language training, are all being offered COVID-19 vaccinations. We will not have any formal way of knowing whether or not they got the vaccination or not. Here is the current process, the current status of vaccinations and access to Fort Leavenworth. If you are vaccinated, you can come on Fort Leavenworth. Now, this is apart from whatever other access requirements you have to meet. I'm only talking about the COVID-19 vaccination component of this. Vaccinated individuals do not have to mask indoors or outdoors on Fort Leavenworth. You are asked, however, that in larger settings, if you can, maintain social distancing. If you feel more comfortable masking, you're certainly welcome to mask. But if you're vaccinated, there is no longer a mask requirement. If you are not vaccinated, you are expected to mask anytime you're indoors in any building on Fort Leavenworth. And you're also asked to mask anytime you cannot maintain social distancing. So that is the guidance relative to vaccinated versus unvaccinated. With regard to you as sponsors, so what about officers who not at English school and their vaccines? So we will not know until the officers who are coming here directly, we will not know whether or not they're vaccinated, and we won't know unless they choose to share with us whether or not they're vaccinated. We are operating literally on an honor system. So if your officer says that they're vaccinated, we're gonna accept that they're vaccinated. Just as if you tell me you're vaccinated, I'm going to accept that you're vaccinated. I'm not going to card you at the sponsor icebreakers. And again, there are HIPAA rules and regulations that are in place that prohibit us from asking those types of medical questions of anyone. And so what I will tell you is you are certainly welcome to, in your communication with your officer, one way to do it may be when you send them the first email, or if you've emailed them already in a follow-up email, you may just say, by the way, my family, we're already vaccinated. And so that's really great. Have you had the opportunity to be vaccinated yet? And they may or may not give you an answer. Now, once they're arrived, once they're here, for those that are not vaccinated and would like to be vaccinated, we will coordinate to get them vaccinated at the earliest opportunity. But we will have to see how that is working, what the flow of vaccinations are that are being made available, and what the various vaccination schedules are at the military clinic on the 4th. But those who come and say they're vaccinated are going to be treated as if they're vaccinated. They will not have a quarantine requirement. Those who are not vaccinated also will not have a quarantine requirement in the sense of what one thinks of when you use the word quarantine. Rather, they are going to be handled under what we refer to as restrictions on movement, and they will be allowed to do essential activities. And essential activities are defined as getting their ID cards, doing their in-processing, going to the grocery store for essentials, moving into their house if their house becomes available during those early days. But they will be expected to wear a mask and maintain social distancing, and also self-monitor for any COVID-19 symptoms, and then report those to us immediately if they have any. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And I'll keep talking about stuff, and we can continue on. Go ahead. We'll go to the next slide, please. Okay. So some of you are going to have the luxury of time and availability to assist your officers in processing. So when those officers arrive, they'll be given a series of appointments that ensure that they have completed all the essential administrative things that they have to do in order to become a part of the international student cohort and be prepared to join the course. If you are available, so the first thing everyone should do is reach out to your Fort Leavenworth and Leavenworth sponsors. And perhaps you already have, maybe they have reached out to you. Mr. Bourne and I have already conducted this briefing with those two organizations. So you may have already been contacted. If so, that's great. But between the three sets of sponsors, our hope is that there will be sufficient availability to assist the officers through those first early days until they establish their own transportation and help them get initially established. Now, your interaction with them, going back to the COVID thing, it is literally a matter of your comfort level. So if you're comfortable picking them up in a vehicle, you're vaccinated, they say they're vaccinated, or whatever the status may be, we're not going to be directive in that. So it's really a matter of what you're comfortable doing. There was a question about care packages for international students. And what I'll do is you are welcome starting on the 29th of June. If you would like to bring a care package to the international or to the IHG hub, the hotel on post where the officers are going to be initially. If you'd like on the 29th to do that, you're welcome to do that. You have your officers' contact information, so feel free to reach out to them and coordinate directly with them on the handoff of that, and that's not a problem at all. So I see a question. I'm just scrolling back up to answer a couple of these questions. So Sally and Larry, your officer asked for your names. Yes, he did. And you're coordinated for attendance let me talk about the International Student Graduate Badge Ceremony, which is the 17th. That is the only live ceremony that is being conducted by the Command and Drill Staff College for this academic year. And after a long discussion, it was determined that we could have a very small number of live participants. So each international student was afforded the opportunity to have no more than 4 people attend the badge ceremony. And the additional restriction was they had to be at least 12 years old, because some of the officers have young children, and of course they would love to have their families there, but we cannot control 6- and 7-year-old children in the Eisenhower Auditorium environment from running around, and that was just deemed as inappropriate. So the officers were given the option of having 4 guests. So if you are one of the people who've been invited to attend by your officer, then congratulations, and we'll see you there. If not, we invite everyone to please watch on Facebook, as was mentioned earlier in the briefing by Sharon. So again, our intent, so everyone understands, our intent, all of the international students will go into Hogue Barracks on the 28th of June. And our intent then is to allow them to start moving out into their permanent housing arrangement as soon as that is available. So some of them will start moving out probably within 2 days of arrival, assuming their houses are available and we have otherwise gotten the necessary administrative things done with them. Okay, Jack. So yeah, if you're vaccinated, let me repeat. You can meet with your officer. If you're vaccinated and they're not vaccinated, you can still meet with them if you want to. That's you're assuming that risk. If they're vaccinated and you're not vaccinated, they're assuming that risk. So the bottom line is anyone that's vaccinated doesn't have to wear a mask, and anyone who's not vaccinated has to wear a mask. Otherwise, you should be meeting, each other under those terms. What I would say is, if your officer is not vaccinated, you should not invite them to go out on an activity until they have cleared that period of time. So I said that is not meeting with you for a social activity is not an essential activity. If you're helping them get groceries or helping them move into their house, or you're assisting them moving around to get through their in-processing appointments, that is an essential activity and you can do it. Otherwise, I would ask that you defer social engagements if they're not vaccinated and you're not vaccinated until after they've cleared that, till beyond the 12th of July. I hope that answered that question. We are going to have a significant number of international students. We're going to have a significant number, almost 80 international students living on post. The challenge with them getting into their houses is going to be associated with their furniture delivery. So each of them have been provided contact information for furniture rental places, and they should all be coordinating that now. We have the addresses on all but 19 of the 113 students. We already know where they're going to live once they get here. We've never been this far out in front of that type of administrative data. So I'm very happy to share with you all those addresses. Those are the addresses your office will move into. Okay, let me go back to a question. If they didn't tell us if they are vaccinated, they need to tell us. You can ask them. You're welcome to ask them. They're not required to tell them, and we can't officially ask them. How will we ever be sure our office? You won't. How will they know you're vaccinated? The vaccination is not mandated because the vaccination is, U.S. military personnel cannot be required to take the vaccination because the vaccination is still under an emergency FDA order. It is not a fully approved vaccination. The day it is a fully approved vaccination, the next day, every soldier, sailor, airman, Coast Guardsman, anybody wearing a Department of Defense uniform will be told to line up and get their shot, or they will be put out of the military service. But currently, it's not mandatory, just as it's not mandatory for you or your families. So yes, I'll be as clear as you need me to be. We cannot formally ask them. My office, in other words, I cannot require the officers to report if they're vaccinated or not. But I can ask them if they are informally, and you can ask them, and I'm not going to ask them. If you want to ask them, you can ask them. They are going to be told what the engagement criteria is. Again, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. If you're not vaccinated, you're supposed to wear a mask indoors or outdoors if you can't socially distance. So if I were in a room with all of you right now, I would assume everyone not wearing a mask was vaccinated, as should you. If both you and the student are vaccinated, can you have them over for the 4th of July? Sure, absolutely. Mr. Thompson, I don't know what to tell you. You know, if you wanted to be really prudent and exercise an abundance of caution, then I wouldn't invite them to any social gathering until the 12th of July or later. But that's that, you know, because then at that point they will have made it through 14 days of being here, even though that's no longer a real requirement for anything. But I'll leave it to you. If I were sponsoring, I would do exactly what I described earlier. I would send an email. I'm going to tell my officer and family coming in that I'm vaccinated, and I'm just interested in whether or not they are. And then if they don't share that, then I'd have to make my decision on what I wanted to do, just based on how I felt about that situation. I would love to be more. If it were in my power to be more directive about this, I would be, but it's not. Next slide. Okay. So some of you, there was mention earlier about some folks might have dependents with them. We'll have to see how it all works. The controlling limitation is that the international student rooms at the hotel, the max occupancy in those rooms is four people. So if an international student has a wife and 3 kids, they can't fit in the room. And there is no, oh, we don't care, my son will sleep on the floor. It doesn't work like that. It is a legal limitation on occupancy that has to do with liability and a number of other things. So for some of your international students that show up and it's a wife and 1 child or a wife and 2 children, and they may go right into IHT hug with the officer. But if they have more, if the total group size is larger than 4, then we can't do it. And there are no extra rooms. So the international student can't rent a second room, and put his wife and other kids in there. There's just no room. And then for the students, which is about 80% of the students, the U.S. government reimburses them for their lodging. The U.S. government cannot reimburse for multiple rooms. So that's why we have that limitation. So basically from the 29th of June to the 1st of August, we're going to be doing a whole series of administrative activities that are going to get the student registered properly so that they can access our computer system, so that they and their authorized family members have access to our military health care, et cetera, et cetera. Early in August, they'll start to do their formal preparatory courses. And then over the course of the entire summer, on a schedule that Mr. Bourne will share with you, we'll be doing a number of field studies program activities, which include the icebreakers that you'll be invited to. There will be a flag ceremony. We do anticipate the flag ceremony being open to everyone. So our expectation right now is that the 23 August flag ceremony will be an open event with every seat in the 2,007 seat capacity of Eisenhower Auditorium filled up. U.S. students, dignitaries, international military student families, and international military student sponsors. So put that on your calendar now and plan to attend. Next slide. So I really have come to determine that, my most important job is expectation management. That's one of the reasons why I'm meeting with you all now. I want to do the best job I can in being transparent and helping to set your expectations so that you in turn can help set the expectations for your officer and their families while they're here. And then to just reiterate, we are one team. So our program enjoys an incredibly strong reputation around the world. International Military Student Program at Fort Leavenworth is the gold standard in the Department of Defense. And while I do believe that my staff works very hard to do a great job, it really is, in fact, I think, the sponsors and the community, the greater Kansas City metropolitan community, that has led our officers to return home and talk in such positive ways about their time in the United States in this program. So you all are incredibly important. Sharon touched on it in her remarks, and Zahid touched on it as well. Some of you will have the opportunity in the future to have your officer come back and be inducted into the International Hall of Fame. And I promise you that when they return, and if it's 20 years from now and we're all in our final resting place, they will talk about us fondly, and they will reminisce about the impact that you made on their lives. They won't mention their tactics class and how it changed their life. They're going to talk about the International Military Student Division staff, their international sponsors, the field studies program, and all the things that we were able to do and help them peel back the mystery that is the United States. And you guys are a significant and critical part of that. So I thank you for that. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, I just wanted to really quickly show you, give you a visual of the program assistants that are going to deal with your, I don't know if everybody can see this entire slide because of the tiles that are up. But Sharon's welcome to share these slides broadly. No restriction on how you share these slides. So if you would like to reach out by email to Ms. Erickson, if your country is represented on here, if you have an emergency or something and you would like to reach out with her, to her, these are the countries that she is managing. And if you go to the next slide, these are the countries that Mr. Sipple is managing. And then if you go to the final and third slide, the programs that Miss Carolyn Taylor is managing. So again, you're going to have, your student will have a dedicated government employee who does nothing in their job except work on administrative support for them and their authorized family members. So again, I would, other than the things that you are very easily in a position to assist with, questions about the area, advice about things that you are well versed in, that's fine. But when it starts getting into any kind of technical question about how do I do this, How does my wife go see a specialist? She's having back pain. So all of those questions need to come to my office and to these program assistants who are skilled and trained at dealing with that. Okay, next slide. Okay, I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Dave Bourne. I am not leaving this meeting. I will be here. I'll be monitoring chat, and I'll be available to answer questions as well. So thank you so much, and off to you, Dave.
All right, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Jim. Next slide. Again, this is just our staff. Jim's already covered that. So for time, I'll go to the next slide. And I just want to touch on the facets here. And one thing I wanted to point out for all of the folks out there, we're going to have a bunch of events where our folks are going to go out. Our job is to provide them with a National Security Studies minor in American Studies while they're here. That's the Field Studies program. We're not just a bunch of tourist guides out there having fun. And all of these facets are critical important to our overall organization. Our references are down there. You can pull those up anytime to know exactly what we're about. As a professor in a college for many years, I just want to say that we take this very seriously as a co-curricular campaign for these international officers. Our job is to dispel the myths of Hollywood and to be able to provide them with an opportunity and an experience that's going to give them the ability to reflect on their time here and make them not only better individuals, better leaders, but in the future, better partners with us. We're not here to tell them how to think. We're here to give them an experience and provide them with an opportunity to use that to go back to their countries and hopefully glean some great ideas and some goodness from our system. And you are a critical part of that. So when they're going out on their events, you know, they're going to ask you questions about these specific facets. And we open for all of you to tell them exactly how you feel, to give them your experience as an American, and also to provide them with how you believe the system is and what it's going to be, and to let them take that information that they're provided and to build their own ideas for the future. So next slide. You are up in the right-hand corner. You're obviously part of the triad of sponsor organizations. We do have student ambassadors, which provide us with the fourth leg of the table. And all of you are going to be critical to ensuring that their experience while they are here is going to be meaningful and memorable. And they're going to provide you with a lifelong opportunity for friendship all across the world. I have sponsored for many years, and I still do keep in contact with all of my friends that I made while I was sponsoring. And I also have visited them in their home countries with my family. And it's just been an opportunity. And you all, for those of you who've been doing this a while, understand that. For those that are new, this is a great opportunity that you're going to, just remember for the rest of your life. And it's going to be very impactful for you while you're involved with this organization. And we do thank you for that, because your selfless service, your ability to step up and to be there for these officers is just a testament to your personality, your personal ability, and your time is very precious. And we thank you for that, because that is the treasure in which we pour into these international officers while they're here. Next slide. These are some imperatives that I like to point out. I'll go through these very quickly. You can read them. Your ability to coordinate with your sponsor teams is critical. Build a relationship with them. Help each other out, back each other up. Make sure we always learn from other sponsors as you're going around, and grow as a sponsor. And someday you'll be a seasoned sponsor to help the new ones. When we go to the icebreakers, be prepared to talk about which event you'd like to go to, the spring food fair, the holiday dinner dance, or the fall food fair. Always remember, I'm going to give you a calendar after this that has all of the 3 or 4 day weekends. Those are opportunities for you to go out and potentially bring your international with you. And always include them in normal life events. And even if the students are busy, don't forget about their families. Take them too and bring them into your family. And you'll have the ability to continue to do that throughout the year. How much should you connect with these people? Completely up to you. We do want you to at least contact them once a month, either email, phone, some type of medium that works for you. But in person's always best. We're humans. And we interact together, and just our presence is going to create the energy. So how much you do or do not contact with them, you'll build that with yourself and with your international. And always have a backup. I bring this up because there's nothing worse than going to an event and seeing an international officer who, unfortunately, for probably great reasons, is there alone. Always talk with your sponsor groups and say, hey, I can't make it. You know, can you cover this for me? So always do plan for a backup. It's imperative for your team. And what's the cost? You know, I bring this up because every culture is different and every custom is different. You know, cultural empathy is critical to us. You know, cultures are honor cultures and they have a need to reciprocate. Take that into consideration. If you're going to take them places, you know, do tell them like it's okay to say no. You know, we understand that. We just want to offer you an opportunity, and we're not forcing you, or we're not going to feel bad if you don't. You know, be up front and be personal with them about what you'd like to do. And if you happen to have the time acumen to take them to Cancun, that's fine. Just make sure that they know they don't have to reciprocate and take you somewhere else as well. So whatever it is that you're doing, you know, have a conversation with them and just let them know like what's in the realm of the possible. I would hope that they'd have an opportunity to do great things with you, but great things can be done for free. Great things can be done in just a family setting at your home. They don't have to be expensive because these folks may not have the background we have and the blessings we have and the money, and they're going to want to give back to you because they're going to be so thankful. So always keep that in mind and have that conversation with them. It's critical. Another thing is some of you may get a person that you don't identify with. It just doesn't work out. It happens. Out of all the sponsors, I've had a couple that we just didn't click. It's okay. Make sure your other sponsors know that it's not working out so they can take up the slack because maybe they're able to work with them. And that's why we have 3 sponsors, because we do understand sometimes personalities or officers, they come with their own baggage and it's not the perfect fit. So if that happens, just make sure that you do contact them once in a while and let them know you care. Don't take it personal and let us know. Myself, on Mr. Stafford, you know, if it's a sponsor issue, you know, please do go through Zahid and Sharon and the team first because they'll be able to address it immediately. But they'll come to us if we need to address it on our end with the officer. We're okay to do that. We'll have a conversation with them. And trust me, there are just some people who are very introverted. They have big families. You know, they're struggling in class and they have a lot to study. And we just have to remember that as we're going through. Sometimes they're busy. You know, I've had an officer who stayed in his room almost every day studying because he had to read everything 3 times to understand it. He didn't have time to go party with me and have a good time and go to Kansas City. And I understood that once he explained it to me. And I've had others that just, we didn't, and that's okay. So with that being said, if it happens, just let us know. We'll do what we can to help, but it's okay. That's going to happen because we're humans. And the next one is we are going to be recognizing you. Make sure that you keep the information with Sharon so that we can ensure that you have the proper accolades that we give to you. Because I know we don't do this for that, but you know what? It's a great opportunity for us to be able to provide you with something as a token of our gratitude for the work that you're doing and the selfless sacrifices that you're giving to our sponsor, to our internationals. And you know what? In the end, make lifelong friends. Above all, we want you to have fun this year. And we're so happy that this year we're going to have the ability to be together, to do events, to get back to a new normal, maybe not the normal we remember, but we are going to get together, and together we're going to be stronger, and we're going to have a great opportunity to work with our internationals unlike any year of 2020, like it's a past memory, which is great. So next. Next slide. There we go. So this is your summer events. In this deck that I sent to Sharon, I have a summer list. I have a fall list and a spring list, so you can have that. I just want to let you know that the spring list may change a little bit because we do have some things in CGSC's calendar that aren't really set. So of course, we work with them to ensure that we provide them with an opportunity for CGSC to be impacted as little as possible. But what I've done here on this is I've broken it out into 3 areas from our other briefs. These are the questions that came up with sponsors. The first thing everybody asked us was, Which one do I need to go to? Well, I made them red because red's important and so are you. So if you see red there, that's ones that we're focusing you in on to let you know, hey, that's probably a sponsor event we would like you to attend and be involved in. The next color we have is black. And that- Uh-oh, Jeff, you're not muted. So if it's in black, then basically that's an event that they're doing, either FSP or something for CGSC. And we want to know that because you may look at the calendar and say, hey, I'd really like to have my international cover today. I've called him, and emailed him, and I can't get a hold of him. Well, guess what? He's out somewhere in Kansas City, or he may be in Manhattan or somewhere else with them. So now you know kind of what's going on with them, and you can track that. The next is in green, we put planned extended academic and holiday breaks. So this is the third tier of opportunities for you and your other sponsor teams to talk about. If there's a 3 or 4 day holiday, what a great opportunity. Hey, come with me. Let's go do something. You're already sitting at home, but we also, on the next slide, if you want to go, what I did here, if you see Veterans Day, it's a holiday and it's probably going to be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? But what you have to realize is there's a huge exam the following week. It's X100. It's almost like a defense thesis for a master's or a doctorate. You're going to be extremely busy trying to study. So what I'm going to keep doing is working with CGSC to find these important events, these big tests, these big events that they have to do for school. And I'm going to let you know that just so you don't feel that they're just kind of being distant. It's probably that they're just studying really hard to pass. And Veterans Day is a great example. Take them for a parade, take them out to dinner, sit with them and tell them about your experiences in America and why Veterans Day is important to you. But then realize that they may need the weekend to study because they're going to be stressing out because that test is a beast. So those are the things that we want to highlight to you. Some of these we've already kind of delineated which countries are going to go to them, and I'll point your attention to the 17th September Fall Food Fair. We've already said Afghanistan and Jordan, right? Now, if we go to the next slide, I just want to point something out. In green, you see Ramadan 2 April through 2 May. Due to our countries that are going to be observing Ramadan, we are going to sit down and we're going to move all of those countries into the Spring Food Fair. We're going to make the months or the countries kind of weird because we can only have so many people attend each event. So with that in mind, a lot of those countries that do observe Ramadan, they will be going to the Spring Food Fair, number one. And then the rest of the countries will be going 15 April when it's in the middle of Ramadan so that people can actually enjoy the event and bring some food and actually interact. We're doing the same thing for our Gettysburg trip. If in 21 through 29 April, you see it falls within Ramadan. So we're gonna direct all of our countries that observe Ramadan to take their elective during the second elective period. So they go to Gettysburg during the second elective period and they don't have to worry about a Ramadan problem while we're out walking the battlefield. So I want to highlight those two things because they're not very specific because we still haven't figured out who is coming and observes Ramadan yet. And once we get that list, we'll push that out to the sponsor organizations and let them know who that's going to be. And we've got some time, which is really good. So this schedule, I would say, is probably very solid for the summer. It's about a 90% solution for the fall. And I'm pretty confident it's about an 80% solution for the spring. And I keep sending this to Sharon as we have updates, as she's asked me to. And again, it's fluid. If a 4-star general shows up, guess what? Here, he gets bumped. There's no FSP, there ain't no parties. Because the first person they're going to call is Jim Fain, and he's going to say, absolutely, we're going to support that. If a congressman shows up, or there's a big, huge event that pops up, or somebody who wants to speak, that's always occurring at CGSC and CGSOC and CAC. So we have to be mindful of that. We're at the good graces of all those other organizations, and sometimes we don't win that fight. So do be flexible and understand that we're going to try to protect these dates as best we can, but it's not always possible because we do get trumped. Besides that, If there's any other questions about the schedule, we can answer those in Q&A. Next slide. And I'm going to bring Jim back. He is a wealth of knowledge, and we'll be here to answer questions for you specifically if it's for the good of the group, or you can chat them into the box and we can get those, or we can stay offline. Sharon and Zahid are done, and then we can answer personal questions as you need for your organization, Sharon and Zahid.
Thanks, Dave. Hey, I am back on the voice here. Let me turn my video back on so you can see me. I answered a number of questions in the chat while Dave was doing his presentation, but there is a couple of things that for those of you who maybe aren't referring to the chat, I would like to reiterate. One of them, there was a good question about whether or not there was going to be a 4th of July fireworks on the installation this year. Yes, there is a planned 4th of July ceremony, but it is not open to the public. So if you do not have a DOD issued ID card, or you do not have a LAC, you will not be able to get on the installation for the 4th of July fireworks. So again, and similarly, if you don't have your LAC, you're not going to be able to get in for the sponsor icebreakers. So again, that really, you should really be highly motivated to get your LAC applications in to Sharon if you don't have them yet. And then, and so what other questions might you have?
I have a question about the care package. You said, Jim, that people could drop it off. Are they actually connecting with the officer, or is there like a neutral place the sponsor are supposed to drop off if they chose to do that?
I would recommend you contact the officer and just take it to the front desk of IHG and either leave it there for them if you don't want to physically interact with them, or meet with them if you're comfortable interacting with them. Okay. So a call ahead of time, or a call. I definitely would recommend a call ahead of time before you take the time to drive up there, and then otherwise just a handoff in the lobby at IHG.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jim, I have one question. You addressed about the adult vaccination, but on Icebreaker, the kids comes too. What about the kids vaccination?
Well, they're not vaccinating anybody currently on the fort under the age of 16. So the children, we'll have to ask what the force protection guidance is. But as you move around the installation right now, you see a mix of children masked and unmasked. If they're indoors and they're not vaccinated, then technically they should be masked. So unless there's some further relaxation of those requirements between now and then, and there could be, so we'll have to see. But whatever the prevailing guidance is, force protection guidance is at the time, we will have to push that out. And literally that's going to be one of those things where we can share it daily, right up to the event, and it could change, right up until the event. But the good news is it's very easy to take a mask off. I just so happened I was in the building when they sent out the order that said everyone that was vaccinated can now remove their masks, and you could literally feel the air pressure change in the building as 400 people ripped their masks off at the same time. So again, we'll make sure that we are upfront with what those limitations are going to be in advance of those icebreaker events. Thank you, Zahid.
Anybody has any other question?
Yeah, I do, Zahid. Jim, will officers living off base follow the same protocol as officers that are living on base?
In terms of COVID?
Arrival and protocol, or COVID?
Yeah, everyone's arriving on the same day. So everyone is supposed to arrive here on 28 June. All 113 officers are arriving and all 113 officers will go into IHG Hogue Barracks, even if they're living off post. And then for those that are living off post, if they already have a lease in place and their home is ready for them to move into, or in the case of the rogue people who may have come early in defiance of the guidance and maybe are already living in their house, they will be released to go back to their leased home as soon as we have finished our initial mandatory administrative actions so that we can do our reports as necessary. Thanks for that question, Tim.
Okay, Jim, I have another question. Usually in previous briefing, you mentioned that how the sponsors should engage with the officers like a personal gain. All those restrictions, if you can just tell the new sponsors that asking any personal favor or giving them a loan or giving them a place to live in the house or
Right.
those kind of, if you can
Yeah.
address that will be helpful.
Okay, no, thank you for the opportunity to address that. What I would share with you is your international students should not be in a position where they are so impoverished that they're asking you for loans or anything like that. Those who are here from the more wealthy countries generally are going to receive very generous allowances from their home countries. Those who are here from poorer countries are typically going to receive some type of subsistence and living allowance support from the United States government. And I'm hesitant to share what those amounts are because those are personal, really. But let me assure you that they are sufficient to ensure that the officer can subsist in comfort while they're here. There is no reason why an officer cannot buy groceries, have all the necessary comforts of living, a reasonable standard of living here in the United States. So it's more than $50 a day that we give those officers just for that. That's above and beyond all of their expenses that we are otherwise reimbursing. So, you can think of it almost as an allowance, but, that's their money. Now, if they choose to spend that, if they decide that they want to try to live on $6 a day on ramen noodles and put the rest of that money in their pocket to go home because that's significant money after they leave, there's really nothing that's a personal decision. And no one should feel guilty about that or should feel that they need to have a bake sale for this guy to help supplement him while he's here. Those allowances are paid to them specifically to allow them to subsist themselves here in a reasonable standard. I hope that clarified it. Also, I would just say, with regard to housing, they're all reimbursed for their housing for those who are from countries that the U.S. government supports. No one should be renting a property. If you're a sponsor, and you're a property owner, my recommendation is that if you want to rent a home, you do it through a property manager who's separate from you, so that there is no conflict of interest relative to that relationship.
Okay, one more question related to this. How about if any officer requests a sponsor to do babysitting?
Yeah, so that's a great point. So here's something that has happened in the past. We have had sponsors that made an offer to officers, say, hey, if you want to drop the kids off here Saturday morning so you and your wife can go to the World Market or enjoy the day together, we'll be happy to watch your kids on Saturday. So the family shows up on that Saturday and they drop the children off and off they go. Well, guess what? The next Saturday, the doorbell rings and it's the officer dropping his kids off again. And then he does it the next Saturday. So you need to be clear with your officer that an offer to babysit is a time limited offer, and it's associated with a specific date and a specific time. It's not every weekend or anytime you need us.
Thank you.
Okay, I got a question.
Please.
This is Dean. I just found out that we have an officer who's married and has 3 children. Is there babysitting available for them? If we wanted to do something with the couple?
They'll have to secure babysitting just as would anyone else. I mean, there is no, we don't have a babysitting service dedicated to international students.
I know, but does that service exist on the Fort? I've never been on Fort Leavenworth base.
Well, there is a child care center on the installation, but it is not a 24-hour a day facility, and it really exists primarily to support the single soldiers, those soldiers that are unmarried and have children, or dual military soldiers, those who are both in uniform. It's not designed as a typical daycare center where anybody can come and drop their children off. So that is not and especially under COVID, as we move back towards more of a normal existence, they probably will return to what they called hourly care. So there was an option there on a space available basis for people to drop their children off and pay by the hour, but that's only during the day. It's not an evenings thing. So if someone wants a babysitter so that the adults can all go out to dinner and a movie, they're going to have to find a babysitter the same way that a U.S. couple would find a babysitter.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
And Jim, I'll just add to that. They do teach a class in babysitting for folks that live on post for their kids. They have to be, I think, 12 and up. And I believe that's at the Welcome Center. And on the 2nd floor, they can go up and ask if there's a list of active babysitters that are potentially able to be contacted. I have seen that multiple times with U.S. students that I've worked with.
Yeah, and again, that there is a list of approved babysitters who are Red Cross. It's a Red Cross class that certifies people to be legitimate babysitters. But again, that was suspended due to COVID, and it probably, I'm sure that's one of the things they will bring back into effect once COVID has released its grip on us.
Got it.
Jim, I think I heard you mention that all of the 113 students have been assigned housing, or you at least know where they plan to live. Those who were assigned.
All but 19.
Okay.
We have
Do they
19.
know, have they been told what that is if we were to ask them?
They have.
Okay.
And I apologize because I thought we had sent to you all. Maybe it just hasn't had time to get out yet, but you should have been provided the contact information for the other sets of sponsors, and you should have also been provided the addresses of your international students. So the contact information from your international student should have contained the email address, as well as the address, the mailing address, for lack of a better term, of where your officer's going, if we know what that is. And we do know what that is for all but 19 of the officers who still have to make a decision on where they're going to live.
Okay. I believe we all of the Greater Kansas City folks got that email. Mine did not show a mailing address or so it's
Mine
possible
did not
he's one of the
either.
19.
Ours
Okay.
did not either.
It could be that your student's one of the ones who hasn't made that determination, but it's all but, we have addresses, like I said, on all but 19.
Okay. Thank you.
So if you want to reach out to your other sponsors, my recommendation was to, talk to the Fort Leavenworth sponsor or send an email to the International Student Program Assistant that's supporting your country, and just say, and that they can very quickly tell you whether or not that officer has an address. Now, while
Can
I'm
you
on
please-
that topic, and I hate to reopen scar tissue, but let me just visit with those of you who are still on the call about one of the unpleasant things that happened this year. We ended up having multiple, I'll refer to them as town hall meetings between the international students, myself, and the general officers on Fort Leavenworth that was basically driven by a high degree of frustration and unsatisfaction by the international students and their families in the way that they were perceived they were being treated. And once we got deeply involved and really peeled back the layers on what the source of all this was, many of them were referring to their sponsors fairly regularly, talking to them about what a shame it was on how they were being cheated this year and not being given all the access and all the opportunities that their predecessors had had. Let me just say that's unhelpful. Because if you're told every day about how you're getting a raw deal, pretty soon you're going to start thinking, I'm getting a raw deal, right? So the only experience these officers and their family members are going to have is the experience they have. And if you don't tell them that it's the worst thing you've ever seen, they won't know it's the worst thing that they've ever seen. So what I would just ask is stay positive. If you can't, the way to start off a conversation is, oh man, back in the good old days when we used to be able to do this, that doesn't lead to anything good. So I'll just ask you to try to minimize that if you can.
Jim, I can check to see if the documents that I received from Dave or Sean have and the addresses of officers, the mailing addresses.
Yeah, if you do and you don't have them, please let us know. We'll get them out. That's known information. So
Okay.
it's just a matter of sending you the spreadsheet and getting that out to you as quickly as possible.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Jim.
Yes.
My officer, what you sent out or what was sent out shows one address, and he said that the address that he was provided is different than the one that was provided to me, and I guess to him as well originally. So I don't know which of those is correct.
Okay. Well, if you're in contact with him, if you're already in contact with him, what I'd ask you to do is shoot him a note and say, hey, please go back to IMSD, go back to your program assistant and just confirm your address. There
Okay.
were a couple of address changes that had to be made based on making a house available for the officer in time. So if you've got something that's different than what we shared, please nudge your officer to come back to us so we can clarify that.
Well, and what he shared was the one that I see on the form that you all provided. And then he said he was given a different one. So that's probably what happened. The one
Yeah.
he's provided me now must be the correct one.
Well, but if we provided you something different, we've got wrong data.
Right.
So if he doesn't come back with us, so here's how it works. The houses on the fort are managed by a private company. The Army doesn't manage housing anymore. I have no authority or role in that. So I'm just a recipient of info, just like the student is. So if they send him a direct communication that says, hey, your address is now this, unless he shares that back to us, we'll have no way of knowing that it changed.
Okay. I know what it is. I could tell you.
Well, I would just as soon you have him contact his program assistant so we can get it on all the right rosters, and
Okay.
because that way it'll come in on an email on somebody's screen that can click a button and fix things. I'm sitting
Okay.
in my house.
Okay. So it's the IMSD that he should
Yeah.
contact.
So on the slides that we shared,
Mary Erickson.
it's Mary Erickson.
Yep.
Yeah. So tell him to reach out to Mary with his updated address,
Okay. I'll do it.
and we'll get that confirmed. Thank you for bringing anybody else. Same thing.
Jim, a quick question. The sheet that I received with the information on our officer says nothing about a wife or children. Am I to assume that this is a single officer?
No,
No,
you're just to assume that we don't have dependent authorization yet. So what country is it?
Singapore.
I anticipate if I don't know off the top of my head if the Singapore officer is married, but if he is, their families always join. So it's just a matter of that. You know, the initial guidance was the families should delay their arrival until we got through quarantine, et cetera. I'm sure that will catch up. I happen to remember that officer's name. It's Go,
Yeah.
G-O-H, Major Go. Just, are you emailing him yet?
Yes, we have emailed him, but we haven't heard back.
Yeah. So in your next email, or when you hear back and you reply to that, just ask him what his plans are, whether or not he's a bachelor or planning to bring family. And in the meantime, we'll those things will catch up over the next few days.
Thanks.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Okay, Jim, I have another question about a lot of officers. They do a separate degree program here other than staff college. Some they go to Baker University, some K-State, some to do the separate master or computer or anything. In that case, if they ask for any help in their assignments to the sponsors, or they need any help. In CGSC, they have a student ambassador who can help them. But outside of the CGSC, what the sponsors are allowed to do or how they can help them.
Well, you know, I would be careful on that. You know, I mean, it's one of those things that it's really a matter of at what point, how much assistance are you willing to render? I mean, if you're a subject matter expert in the area and the student has questions about it, yeah, paper and you go, yeah, this all looks good to me. I mean, that might be one thing. But if he's asking for something more significant than that, he wants you to actually aid in research or help him get, you know, material or you know, again, that's difficult. And they're, you know, that the program that they're a part of, that civilian college or university is going to have a code of ethics that addresses that type of thing, whether it's plagiarism or whether or not it's unauthorized access or support from someone or using materials that they're not supposed to have. So that's really difficult to answer. I would just say, you know, if you feel like you're being taken advantage of, you probably are.
If they ask to prepare assignments, so
yeah, there's no way that you should be preparing assignments for anyone.
yes.
Just as their student ambassadors don't prepare assignments. I mean, we tell the student ambassadors it's completely fine if the officer, you know, needs a little immediate assistance, especially to help intervene with maybe an instructor who isn't taking the time to explain things sufficiently to an international student. But if it crosses the line from kind of yes, no, immediate assistance type thing into something more than that, then it's probably over the limit.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have any question?
Well, I think the high water mark on participants was 62, and I've managed to scare people away. We're down to 43 now, so.
that's better than the last two, Jim. You're doing
Just
good.
have the hardcore ones are hanging on now.
Yeah, Jim, the hardcore is here, and there were 66 at one
Oh,
point.
was it 66? Thank you, Don.
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
Thank you.
I love it. Thanks
Okay.
for counting.
I want to add one thing about all those sponsors who are sponsoring Muslim countries officers. So if you guys have any question about Muslim officers about their food, about their culture, about their social gathering, how to invite them, how to sit, because there are some, they don't want their females to be mixed with the male. So if you have any question, just feel free to give me a call or call the other senior sponsors who sponsored Muslim officers before, because we are family and we just support each other. So don't hesitate to call senior sponsors or me or any board member.
All right, I just want to add thank you to Jim and Dave for presenting this information, very informative. And of course, you all, I think, have my contact information. So, and you can contact any one of us on the military committee. It's, let's see if I can remember here, Joan Barrett, Pat Burnett, Karen Haver, Tom Black, Jane Cole, Alan and Pamela Felton, Randy Pace, Maggie Choplin. So, and we split up our sponsors among the committee so that it makes it a little bit more manageable for overall for us. But you can contact any one of them, or you can always reach out to me if you have questions.
And at the end, I want to thank Mr. Fan and Ms. Bourne for their detailed briefing, very informative and very helpful. And Sharon covered almost everything else. So all I can say that to new sponsors especially, that I started like 12 years ago, just like you guys started this year. And I've been enjoying with my wife, Carrie, those 12 years, and I am planning to stick with this organization for many, many, many more years. And thanks for the help, Mr. Jim Fan, Mike Bretman, my senior sponsors who provided whenever I needed, they helped me. So we are all family and we stick together in challenging time and fun time. So don't hesitate to coordinate with each other. And thank you so much and one more thing I just want to share, that we are volunteers. And volunteers, if you are in Army, probably you know that when you go in Army, you volunteer yourself. And you get your assignment from the Army, you don't question that why you are giving me this assignment. It's our duty to fulfill that assignment with full heart because we are serving this country. We are not serving our own desires. Whatever image we are leaving on those officers, they will remember forever. And if we can't leave a good image of this country on those officers, we are wasting the time. And if we don't feel comfortable, we can give that responsibility to somebody else who can take care of those officers better so they can be our ambassador in future. So all I can say that treat them like you are leaving the best image of this country on their family, on their kids, and their friends forever.
Well said, Zaid. Very well said.
Thanks, everybody, and keep those cards and letters coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you all.
Thank
It's been a wonderful
Hey, everyone.
orientation.
Thank you.
See ya.